Today, you will hear from our distinguished speakers, but our program will be moderated by a good friend of the museum, Meryl Elam. Meryl Elam is a principal in the Atlanta-based firm of Mack Scoggin Meryl Elam Architects. Her work with Mack has received numerous awards, including the 1995 Academy Award in Architecture from the American Academy of Arts and Letters, the 1996 Chrysler Award for Innovation in Design, and no less than 6 national AIA Awards for Excellence. Meryl's firm designed the High Museum satellite space at Georgia Pacific, completed in 1986, and redesigned our Richard Meier galleries after the Rings exhibition during the Olympic season here. Her current projects include the Yale University Health Center in New Haven, Connecticut, the Gates Center for Computer Science at Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh, and the new U.S. Federal Courthouse in Austin, Texas, and the Jean Grey Hargrove Music Library at the University of California, Berkeley. In addition to her practice, Meryl lectures and teaches, serving most recently as a visiting critic at Syracuse University and visiting distinguished professor of architecture at the City College of New York. So please welcome Meryl Elam to the stage.
I thought it would be nice to bring the panelists with me, since that's why you've come. Virginia, thank you very much for that nice introduction. I can't tell you what a pleasure it is to have been asked to do this, because I've known all 3 of these people now for 20 odd years. And so in preparation for this event, it has caused me to sort of dust off my memory, refresh my memory about our past associations. But the really exciting part about it is that I have learned so much more about these people, things that I really didn't know. And so that's been a real pleasure. I consider all 3 of these people to be extraordinary architects and extraordinary people and extraordinary Atlantans. So what I'll do here is introduce in the order that the panelists are seated, and this will also be the order in which they'll give their presentations. So we'll start with Oscar Harris, who is to your left. You're whatever. Oscar's closest to me. And it's interesting that Oscar and I first met, I believe this is true, when I was invited to sit on the State Board of Architects, which is the licensing agency for the state. And Oscar was there as a member of that board, and served on it for, I think he told me something like 21 years. Did his professional duty there as well as many other institutions. But I understood Oscar as a consummate professional. He's been 32 years as the founder and chairman of Turner Associates Architects and Planners. And whether you know this or not, you know Oscar's work as a professional, as an architect. If you have ever been into Centennial Park and you've seen the big iconic light fixtures there, if you've ever wandered through the atrium at Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, you know his work. The same is true for Terminal E. That's all Oscar. Oscar's been a big presence in Atlanta for a long time. And something you may not know about him is that he has started what he calls the Atlanta Center for Creative Inquiry. which is an after-school program that introduces high school students to the arts and architecture. He tells me that about 150 of these young people have moved on into arts and architecture programs, creative programs. Now, also I should say that Oscar's received a number of really fine awards. He was the Atlanta Chamber of Commerce Small Businessman of the Year in 2003, excuse me. He was inducted into the American Institute College of Fellows in 2006, and many more awards and recognitions for Oscar. Well, but the big surprise was this. I had known Oscar for all of these years, but I didn't know that Oscar painted. What a revelation. And he's going to show us about this and talk to us about it today. And so he tells me that this has been a lifetime affair with painting, starting with early childhood. Just a little background on Oscar. He studied the arts from Lincoln. He got a Bachelor of Fine Arts from Lincoln University and his Master's of Architecture from Carnegie Mellon. And it was interesting when we were doing the Carnegie Mellon project, the Gates Center there, we had the pleasure of interfacing with Oscar because he sits on their board of directors. So that was great fun. Now, Amy. Amy is the only girl in the group. She's in the center there. Amy and I met in 1986 on a tour of artist studios, and this was when Nexus, which is now the Contemporary, was on Ralph Miguel Avenue in the old school building there. On the tour, we walked into Amy's studio, and there was Amy surrounded by beautiful ceramic work, by paintings, by all, I don't know if you were working in encaustic at the time, maybe. I'm sure you were. And here on the floor in this basket was Sophia. And Sophia was a newborn, and that was 23 years ago. Since that time, and let me tell you a little bit about Amy's background. She studied literature first, then she went to Georgia State and got her Master's of Fine Arts in Art. And then in 1981, she decided to make her life even more rich, make her life richer, and she went to Yale University in the architecture program there. Amy likes to say about herself that she's a public artist and an architect, and she may talk about the lines between those two roles, but you may know some of her work. She's done a project called Sun, Orange, Green, Blue, and Blue, which is an environmental installation at the Fulton County Center for Health and Rehabilitation. But my favorite piece is what she calls Power Wrap. And Power Wrap is actually an enclosure for an electrical substation, which is on North Side Drive, and it backs up to Means Street. Is that right? Is it North Side of Means? It's a beautiful thing. You should go there and see it. It's beautiful in the daytime, and it's beautiful at night. It's real because it has this array of LED lights that are very compelling and beautiful. And, you know, it takes a very creative mind to take a substation and turn it into a work of art. Just to say a little bit about Amy's now 16 years of work in architecture. She calls herself Amy Landisberg Architects, and she's also works in association with LP3 Architecture. They've done, Amy Landisburg architects have done galleries and museums, educational buildings, and so on. And they currently have a fire station number 2, I think it is, ongoing in Decatur. So Amy is very productive in lots of modes, and she'll tell us about that. Now, to Amy's left is Bill Carpenter to me. I met Bill in 1984 at Mississippi State University. It was my first opportunity to teach architecture in studio. And I met Bill there. He was in my studio, and he was a bit rowdy, but as he still is. And but he was a very intense student. So what I've seen happen with Bill, he went from Bill, the rowdy undergraduate student, to Virginia Tech, where he got his master's degree, and then he went on and earned his PhD in architecture from the Birmingham Institute of Art and Design in Birmingham, England. And so now I have to call him Dr. Bill, and I'm very proud of what he's done. Bill is the sole owner and founder of what he calls Lightroom Studio, which is based here in Atlanta. And it's a multifaceted studio. Not only is it architecture, but it's also focused on filmmaking, graphics, website, and much more, and he'll tell you about this. But Bill is also a teacher, a longtime teacher. He received the National ACSA AIAS Educator of the Year Award in 2000. That's no small feat, I'll tell you. He's also an author, and he has a very important book called Learning by Building, Design and Construction in Architectural Education. This was the focus of his thesis work, and this book was the outcome of that, and is an important piece. And Bill is so diverse in what he does. He's a professional activist. He was president of the Georgia AIA. He studied with Sambo Mockbee at the Rural Studio. He's impressive all around. So with that, well, I didn't mention any of the awards that Bill's work has gleaned, but rest assured that there's a tall stack of them there, and Bill is such an exciting person to have here in Atlanta, doing all that he does. So with that, I think that I'll leave the podium and we'll turn it over to Oscar, and then Amy, and then Bill. And then we'll all come back after the presentations and have a bit of a roundtable discussion and some question answer.
Thank you very much, Mel, for this kind words. Thank you. Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing today? I'm very excited to be here today. I'd like to thank the High for this opportunity. I'd like to thank the AIA. I'd like to thank Dan very much for inviting me here. And I'm going to talk about my own experiences in the field of art and architecture. And I think that's the best way I can explain what I've been doing. Now, let me see here. I got to see if there's a pointer here. Oops. Did you do that, or did I? Huh? I did that? Okay. Is this a pointer here? How's the pointer work?
It's the red one.
Oh, the red one. Okay, thank you. I need to know what that is. Okay. Let's go, Todd, to the first slide. This is, I started off actually, this is a painting that I did when I was 5 or 6 years old. And surprisingly enough, it's of architecture. And at that point, I did not know I wanted to be an architect, but I was doing buildings even then. And one thing I want you to take note of the color, because it's been very interesting, because I've had to go back and look through a whole lot of my things to come to this presentation, so I've found out a lot about myself, so I didn't realize this my own self. So this is one of my first paintings, coming from the soul of a 5-year-old. Next. This is a sketch I did at 10 years old. I went to Disney World. While I was at Disney World, I met Mr. Walt Disney himself. And Walt Disney himself signed this thing, and he said to me, "You're doing a great job. Keep up the good work." And that got me enthused to keep on drawing. Next. So these are just a few of the early pencil sketches that I was doing, like 10 and 12 years old. And then I really didn't realize I've been drawing since all that time. So next. That's my mother right here, and that's me. And the interesting thing is about this is that this is in 1953. My mother and myself and her friend, we went from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to Paris on a prop airplane. This is a prop. There's one prop, and there's the other prop. And you fly across the water for 20 hours, I would think. So that's a scary thing back then. At the time, my mother was exposing me, she said, to Europe, and she was exposing me to the finer things of life. So I got the chance to see Paris, Germany, Switzerland, and all of that good stuff. Go on. After I came back and a little bit longer, then I kept drawing more and more, and this is a sketch I did back when I was about 17 or 18. But at this point, I was drawing because the girls. And the reason why I was drawing because of the girls was when you drew something or you painted something and you put a spotlight on it, especially at night on the wall, and they came in the room, they thought you were, just thinking about great things. And I'd always just say, yes, I'm pondering an idea here. I'm pondering a great thought. And this is a self-portrait of myself in a pensive mode. And so that's what I was doing then. Continue. Next. I was doing a lot of drawings and sketches and paintings. I drew very, very well. This piece is about 4 feet by about 8 feet. And I was selling my pieces then, too. People were buying them, surprisingly enough. But I was also building things like model airplanes. I was building soap boxes. I was building all sorts of stuff. So using my fingers, my hands, building, painting was part of my whole sort of being. Continue. Once I got married, that's my wife Sylvia, I was painting the house. Inside the house, I was painting the house. This is inside on a porch, but you notice the red and the eye and all this sort of stuff. I was painting everywhere. So go on. This is another painting back, I think, dated in 68. This is a painting, actually, of a clown. I went to the circus, and I came back, and these paintings these expressions happen in a rather explosive way. They don't happen like I'm sitting there pondering it. It just sort of happens. Like a painting like that would take me about maybe 2 hours. And the thing is, there's the nose, there's the eyes, 2 eyes, and a mouth, and the colors, red. And the interesting thing about this is the red idea, the red paint keeps coming up, and red. You'll see it throughout most of my projects, and blues, and the yellow, and the oranges going. Next. This is one in 67, a very fast little, like a watercolor with some chalk. I'm still selling paintings too. My friends would always come by, and I was selling paintings to get my books in college. I had a number of paintings that I would put together, and it was very, very nice. I enjoyed that for doing it. Go on. This is one in 74. That's supposed to be a self-portrait of me. at that time. But the eyes are looking to the structure and the building. I'm still having architecture on my mind, I guess, like that. So I went to architectural school. As stated, I graduated from architectural school, and I started a firm, Turner Associates, 6 years after I graduated from architectural school. Next. Turner Associates, this is a group of us, and the thing I want to express to you is the idea of sketching and drawing and art. These are initial sketches that we normally do before you go into a project. These are the ideas. And then the ideas get themselves into the models, and then the models get into drawings, and then drawings get into construction, and then constructed. That's the normal process. But it starts with the actual conceptualization, which is the hand sketching and drawing. Next. These are going to be a few of our projects that we've done. This is a juvenile courthouse. Was done, completed a few years ago, but the interesting thing about this, it has a metal panels and it has a curvilinear top. Again, trying to get some curvilinear forms and that sort of thing, but a courthouse has to be a courthouse. It has to look like a courthouse, but I want it to look still contemporary. We also integrated art into the front area here in the lobby area. Go next. But the lighting of it became part of the artistic expression. Next. Next. This is the perimeter station here, MARTA station. When I did this, red again, the red panel, and I integrated art into the window itself, which is Will McDaniels was the artist on that. So when I became an architect, the point I'm trying to say, I was sensitive and am sensitive to art. So there I try to integrate art. Wherever I can, I integrate art into the building and the placement of it and the integration of it so it's not haphazard. And that's part of the way that I have just been going through most of my projects. Next. Here you'll see the glass and the translucency and transparency when the sun comes shining through it. Next. One of my most exciting projects, I think, is the atrium at Hartsfield. Before the atrium, there was nothing but a big hole in the center of the terminal. So we were filling that hole, and how do we fill it? And I said, well, let's put a circular skylight that's transparent, letting the sun come into the center portion of it. Next. And that's what we did. And we also designed the towers, the clock towers, and the flooring and how that would work in an artistic expression, always bringing art into the whole process. Next. Again, a picture here showing the tower and the floor. Next. The light tower. Next. And the panels here. This process of bringing art in is a very important process to me and continues as we're working at present. Next. 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 And this is the time at which the atrium was open. You can see all the people that are gathering here, but interesting to see the floor. We thought about the floor and artistic expression of the floor, even from the first level, the second level, and the third level, looking down on the atrium floor. One thing I did not do. It didn't work. Let's see. It's not working. All right. There we go. I'm going to start to bring in a little track here, a little sound track. Because moving forward here, as I move forward, it gets more into the art part. And more in the art part, I like jazz. Jazz is important to me because when I paint with jazz. Let's go. Let's move forward. Fulton County Government Center, we did some years ago, again, is artistic in its expression and form. Next. The Orlando Airport, another was the ceiling and how that's expressed is an art form, I feel. Next. This is my son back here running. He and I did the church, but the main thing is the steeple piece, which is an artistic art piece that has a light and lights up at night, sort of like the Centennial columns. Next. This is Concourse E. I was the prime architect on this project. The main thing about Concourse E, I was in control, which was a very seldom thing for me to be in control of anything. But at this one here, I was in control of the whole project. The main thing we wanted to do was art. So when you go out to Concourse E, if you look at the walls, a lot of walls are full of what? Art. The rest of the terminal does not have that. So we were instrumental in getting that next going out there at Hartsfield. It's a very large project. This is horizontally cut through the site. It's one of the biggest buildings in the city of Atlanta, but it's all laid horizontal. Next. Next. Sketching is real important. Art sketching of an idea. This is the sketch I did with coming in from the trainway, coming up to the concourse level. Next. This project is the gateway to Atlanta, but it combines the symbolism and spirit of creativity to the southern region through its architectural and artists coming together. Next. Next. This is E before a lot of people came in it. But you notice the floor again. The floor started getting to get back to the atrium. The atrium at the time I was designing both at the very same time. So, next. I brought in artists. Lev Mills, artist, was the one that did this piece. It's when you first come from the trainway up the stairs to E. But that element, placing that element there was very, very important for the whole feel of the space. Next. Here's what you would see, something like that, but we thought about how the light came in. This is this large sculpture that he did. Next. In Concourse E, we designed the fixtures themselves. The light fixture here is designed symbolizing a woman, a southern woman. You know, the southern women used to have those big hats? This is the big hat. This, again, I noticed was red. Next. I was hired to do the look of the games. When I was hired to do the look, I said, what is a look? A look is what it's all about, what you see, what you feel. This is me signing the final diagram and the layout for the quilt pattern that got to be the whole look of the games for the Olympics. Next. This is the pattern being put into a quilt form. Next. This is the top of the Centennial Towers at Centennial Park. We carefully designed this so that this element, or the elements of those towers, would symbolize the spirit of people. The lighting within the tower, we designed how the lights shine, they flicker. When you walk around there, if you notice it, don't those towers just sort of flicker? If you've noticed it. If you haven't noticed it, go down there this evening and check them out. But they have a sparkle to them. They have a glow that's totally different than any other of the surfaces around there. Next. And the reason why is they're making these elements right here that now have become the symbol for the city of Atlanta. Again, architecture and art being integrated together. Next. This is one of my paintings here that one thing that architecture is, And it starts as a free form, but then it gets more rigid as it goes along. Why does it get rigid? Because you have the code people. You have all these rules, you have all these regulations, you can't do this, you can't do that. You got the owner telling you can't do this, you can't do that, we don't have the money for this, you don't have the money for that. Then you do your drawings, the contractor says you left out this, you left out that. And then you get into the construction process, and then everybody's fighting and hollering and everything else like that. So painting is the opposite of that. Painting says you can do anything you want to do, and nobody can tell you a damn thing. So that's why I like painting. So next. This is my house. I live on 10 acres of land, and this is where I am more free to be free sort of wielding in my mind. So once I leave my business environment and the contractors and all the problems, I come to my house. When I get there, it's all about letting my mind just sort of float and go where it wants to go. So here I have my studio here and that sort of thing. So when I get out here is when I start creating my paintings. And that's important to me. So how we combine painting into architecture, I say that painting is a sort of a freedom from architecture. But also it helps you to understand architecture a lot more. It gives you a sense of balance. When you do a painting, you have to do it in balance, and you have to worry about color and all this sort of stuff. Next. But this house is sitting in the forest, and I have the forest. I have spotlights on the forest. I light up the outside so the inside can be dimly lit, and then I have art all within inside of the house itself. And why do I do that? I do that because I want to inspire myself. Next. Next. I have a fish pond, koi. And so this was one of my sketches of the fish pond and the koi in the fish pond. I don't know how I got involved with these kois, but I love these koi. I have to feed them every day. You got to worry about the pumps. You got to do all that. But I will go down and maybe grab a canvas, and this might be done within 2 hours. Just a fast sketch. Next. I like jazz. In fact, I'm going to turn it up a little bit. When I go down to paint, I'll be listening to something like this. John Coltrane. John Coltrane is improvisational. It's not planned. You listen to those notes, they're just happening whenever it happens. I mean, and then people are feeding in and out, saxophone and everything. The same thing in my painting. When I get to start painting, my mind starts going. And then the line work, I just start sketching, and whatever comes out, comes out. Next. I did this of a sketch of a lady that I noticed her because she had these gigantic gold earrings. She had a beautiful complexion, dark skin. She has some wonderful lips, red lips and big eyes. And I went down, this painting is about 3 feet by about 7 feet. But I'll do this, a painting like this is done in maybe 3 hours. Just, it just happens. I don't know what happens, this way it goes. Next. This is a painting I did in '78. I call it Old Time Religion. How I got that name, I don't know. But again, a painting should be balanced. It should be, but yet it should have a free flow to it. And again, you notice the reds and the blues. Continue next. This is one, it's not that well focused in, but it's called Blowing at the City. This is a guy, top of his head, body, legs. He's got a horn. He's blowing at the city. This is the top of a building. and the building and the city behind. This place is like 4 feet by 4 feet, and it's made out of scraps. It's made out of aluminum scraps, nails, and paint. Next. This is another one that was done rather quickly. And I do these pieces because I like them. Sometimes I'll do a piece and I'll have to rework it over and over again. Sometimes I'll do a piece at night and I'm listening to Coltrane and I might have a drink. And it's looking good to me at night. But when I wake up in the morning, it doesn't look as good. So you have to find out the pieces that look good at night and in the morning. Next. This is another one I did. Next. This is where I'm taking aluminum, and this is from flashing, aluminum flashing, and cutting it out. And actually, I'm beating the aluminum. See those little nodules there? Oops, go back. That's where I'm taking a hammer and beating that metal. And then this is a piece of screen here. This is screening here. This is a reflective film here. And this is like a rivet where I put rivets in. This is a button, actually, as part of the piece. Next. This is another one, aluminum piece that's beat. And these are some nails. This is some asphalt covering, a roof covering. Next. And this is my last piece I did, which I like, called Reflections. Why is it called Reflections? I don't know. It just comes to me as such to be. Actually, this piece is a piece of watercolor paper that's torn out here. This piece is a piece of watercolor paper. This is watercolor paper. And this is acrylic. And this is aluminum. But again, the reds keep coming out in the blues. Next. So that's about it for me. And I thank you very much, and I enjoyed very much.
I'm Amy. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for the introduction, Meryl. That was wonderful to see that rich, rich work in color. Okay. I can't remember. And that goes back. Okay. Thanks. We can turn the lights down. There they go. Thanks. I thought I would talk about fuzz and how a lot of fuzz makes a haze. And this wasn't the baby that Meryl saw in the basket in '86, but our second daughter, who was born in 1990, you know, all babies are spectacular in their own ways. This baby had really long eyelashes, black, thick, cantilevered, you know, miles of eyelashes, and we were very awed by them. And those lashes, I think, started a lot of work about tiny elements of, you know, fuzz, beautiful hair, beautiful little tiny pieces of things that somehow attach us to our corporeal bodies, our mortal bodies. And in this piece, shredded tires were arrayed in a way just to make the shadow that would look like Ava's lashes. So it was about the effect and it's about the fuzz, and this has been a preoccupation for a while, so I thought I would show it to you. These are the eyelash dandelions that were created from falsies. You know, I guess we all blow those when we were kids, and so these were simulated dandelions made from eyelashes. They're very fuzzy. And in this was a commission for a show about Eudora Welty. And in this case, eyelashes are sprouting from linoleum, kind of like they would on the beauty parlor floor, maybe. And a lot of fuzz together makes a haze, meaning hundreds of little motions, hundreds of little pieces suspended together creates an environmental effect that is somehow related to that I don't know, I'm looking for this fuzz and in this corporality in it. And this is all lingerie ribbon, so when lots of these little pieces are put together, there's this tactility and tiny movements and indices of hands at work, making in broader environmental conglomeration. And it can get gauzy and it can get hazy and remain intimate. And then when I was asked to go to China one year to do a show, I was thinking a lot about this. That year was a really bad year for mining accidents in the United States. I can't remember the year exactly, I'm sorry. I think 2004. There were 27 or 8 casualties of miners in the United States dying in the mines. That same year, there were 20,000 of similar accidents in China. It led me to think about, this kind of large-scale, human effort and activity and labors. It's kind of hard to work on that. But I started to think about human skin, again, this kind of corporality. And incidentally, I like to look at wood veneers a lot. And they're kind of the skin part of the wood where you see its grain. And it looked fleshy. And so I scanned these wood grains and printed them onto transparent medium and laid them up with gauzy fabric and pinked the edges to try to make a screen of skin-like stuff for China that hung in an old factory there. It was called Skin Trade, and it was beaded and bowed and strung up and woven, and lots of fingers were in motion. And there were pigs there too. So you could look at the pig skin through the wood veneer skin. And so the more tactile, corporeal, fuzzy haze, I started to wonder about the optics of it, the tectonics of it, and if you wanted to do that on purpose in a built way. So I started to study looking through meshes, and that is something that comes up in building a lot. There's a lot of screening that happens in building, in creating environments. And the optics of a haze seemed really fascinating. And the Something about the haze seems to compel a desire to see more clearly, to focus, to find something to focus on. It's kind of an ironic thing. So with creating that phase, this particular haze is made out of that cellular plastic that you can buy, and I just sliced it and stacked it up. And when you get back from it, you can see through it depending on the light. If you get really far back, it's almost transparent because your brain puts all the little tiny holes together. Does that make sense? No? A little bit? Okay. When you get up really close, you can only see the hot little spot that you would look at that's sort of as big as your eye. So I was thinking about hazes and how they make you want to see harder, to look through, to squint through, and that reminded me of fuzz and the other things I loved and cared about. So when faced with this electrical substation, there was a very strict requirement. They don't want you to go into them at all. And there's a maximum opening permitted in the substation of 3 inches in any direction, which means it's a very, very dense barrier that needs to be built. Substations are all around us. You'll find them. They're at the end of little residential streets. They're downtown. They're in a parking deck. They're all over the place. And people find different ways to try to hide them. This one was for Georgia Tech, which is a technology school, which is really proud of itself, and it should be. And so the notion became, well, why do you need to hide this electrical node? It's part of a system that we live on. We can't live without it at this point in any case, and it's not really something that you can hide. And we're so inured to them, they're all over the place, we never look at them, and they really are full of pretty amazing, intense, transforming equipment. So the thought came that we might make a haze that would make you want to focus on parts of the station. So by simply laying up lots of little pieces of steel and reorganizing the orientation of them, it made a hazy overall scrim across the station, but one that forced views to certain special parts within. So this big Medusa monster in there comes into focus at the right moment when you walk or drive past it. It's the romantic one with the sun captured there. So it's about 500 feet long and it's about 25 feet tall. There are lots of gates and doors in it that we worked hard to obscure, but mostly they're just little pieces of steel that are flickering around by simple rotations in geometry to permit views into the station and make them a little more intriguing than they normally would be. And we offered colored programmable light within the station, as Meryl noticed, that can sort of pulse or wave or subside, or it's programmable. The idea is that Georgia Tech students, anybody could decide to do a different kind of program there. And due to the difference of interior light and exterior light and the haze making, sort of dramatic views happen into the station. And all that kind of brutal equipment gets kind of fuzzy because of it. Thank you.
Wow. That is so inspirational to see both of those artists and designers and architects sharing their ideas with us, and it's such an honor for me to be here. It's such an honor to be here with my my family and my coach who's here, my students, and it's a beautiful experience to be able to make an impact as a teacher and as an architect. And what I'm going to share today is a little bit about how I approach my work. And Merrill had charged us to talk about ourselves. And I thought, as I stepped back from that, I just started thinking, what does that mean? It probably means that I need to think about more deeply how I got here, today. So what I can begin to share with you is that Lightroom is a brand, it's an idea. It really questions the whole notion of what an architect does. And as we look at that, I think that we have seen the way new media has changed the way we communicate. And that's exactly what Lightroom was about. It was about designing a firm that not only designed buildings, but designed films and the experience of websites as a movement through a series of compositional spaces that are emotive, and then moving into graphic design, something that has been near and dear to my heart. So the idea of multidisciplinarity. But more than anything, the concept for Lightroom was to make us happy, to make me feel happy every time I saw the logo, every time I heard someone say, that looks very Lightroom, that's really the purpose, is that it's a community, it's a studio, it's something much bigger than me. And so that's what I'll be speaking about today in this great company with Oscar and Amy. So this is my studio. This is Lightroom. It's in downtown Decatur, and it's made of the old Fulton County Stadium. If you're from Atlanta, you know they tore that building down, and they made it into concrete blocks. And I found the blocks, and in some way I felt like Hank Aaron's number 755 was, in this building, as imbued in these walls. And so they continue to inspire me. It's on a historic site, so it frames the view of an old summer house for a family from Savannah had in 1881. And speaking of near and dear to my heart, my daughter Marette is here. These are my daughters. That's Marette on the left, and that's Esme on the right. And I built Lightroom across the street from Decatur High School so that I would hope that they would come over and hang out. And thankfully they do, but I had no idea that they would bring all their friends. So sometimes we just stop working and start talking with their friends. So it's wonderful to have them part of my life and part of the studio's life. So Merrill's question had me thinking about an intern that I hired recently. She went to Auburn. Her name is Maria Sykes, and we started talking. She was working for me for about 6 months, and her father came in and brought this album. And my father is from Duck Hill, Mississippi. His name is Billy Joe Carpenter. My mother is from Brooklyn. So I grew up in New York. I was raised on the end of Long Island, and that's what was so intriguing about Mississippi, because I had been reading about Faulkner, and I was completely enamored with the work of Eudora Welty. And my father was from Duck Hill, just south of Oxford, where Faulkner's Roanoke is. And so I was talking to Maria's father, and he opened up this album, and I'm in the front row, right here, with the cowboy hat. And so I found out that Maria was my cousin. I had hired my cousin. Yet I didn't know. I didn't know that had happened. And so every summer we went to Mississippi. This is the Sykes family reunion. And this is Big G, who is a real inspiration in my life. That was my grandmother, who lived next door to us in New York, and then when I went to college, she went back down to Duck Hill and restored a beautiful church that her father had built in Duck Hill. Duck Hill is a town of 112 people with houses built around a hill that's shaped like a duck. So then I went up this past weekend and I was talking to my parents, and my mother had found this drawing that I made when I was 16, and it is of our house. This is the house that I grew up in on Long Island in Mattituck, and it was a beautiful Victorian with a view to Long Island Sound, and and these beautiful trees, this big oak tree and this wonderful cypress. And it was up on top of a hill, and it really made me think about drawing, you know, looking at this again, thinking, how important is drawing? And to me, it's very important because I draw every day. I get into a state when I'm drawing in my studio or in my studio classes at Southern Poly that the students really try to pull them out of the computer and into their sketchbooks and into the art of hand drawing, which I think is an art that has been lost and needs to be maintained, needs to be part of the way that we think about ideas. So that's what this drawing made me think of. And then I had the same year done this painting in Duck Hill of an old barn, a watercolor of an old barn. So my mom has these over the fireplace at her house, or my parents' house. And then I was thinking about Meryl's question, who are you? What are you doing? And I passed this truck, and I thought about this truck as a framing device. I thought, what a brilliant truck, you know? And Oscar, there's the red, you know? And, you know, what a powerful idea to have a truck that's all about framing the view. And it was just parked there. In fact, I found out that it's a billboard that slides down here, a scrim on each side, but I thought it was such an amazing element, sculptural element itself. So I would like to get a truck like this someday. And this summer, I was with Esme and Marette down at Tybee Island, and I took some photographs from the top of the lighthouse down. And so photography is connected to drawing for me. In many ways, it's a way of seeing. That's really what drawing is. It's interrogating ideas. It's allowing your mind to be open to new ideas and to move through preconceptions. And I find that photography also allows me to do that because it's so immediate, you know? It's so much about seeing things that are in our lives in a new way. And I think that's what photography, certainly the work of Harry Callahan has always said that he sees the very simple things in life, whether it's the silhouette of someone's face or a field of grass. He allows us to see things in a new way. And then I thought about graphics and how important graphics are. And in that same view, these are all looking in different directions from the top of the lighthouse. Here's the helicopter pad, and I just thought, what a beautiful graphic design that is, that rarely you would get to see it from the ground level there, but just that beautiful H in the landscape. And then I tried to think about how I feel, and this is my niece, and she's balancing between these two things. And that's very much how I feel a lot, because I'm teaching and I'm practicing, and I'm trying to do both very well. Both things are mutually dependent, I think. My teaching makes my practice better. My practice makes my teaching better. But it is this precarious balance that practicing educators exist within, because you have half a day, and then you go up to the studio and you need to be on. And so that's this kind of feeling that Carolyn was making me think about here. And then just some views into the landscape around the house that I grew up in this beautiful swamp looking over toward the vineyards. The vineyards out on Long Island are beautiful. They used to be potato farms, and thankfully the Vinters came in about 15 years ago and have created on the whole North Fork. If you go out there, this is what it looks like in the spring. And I thought that in a lot of ways that I missed the water, you know, that the water was so important to me. And living in Atlanta has pulled me away from the water. So the feeling in my mind as I was trying to describe who I am, I felt like I need to somehow connect with the water again. And so that's why I brought these few images right here. This was the view out my bedroom window. And this was exploring down through that area on the edge of Peconic Bay and Long Island Sound. And then architecture, how effortless and how the vernacular architecture on Long Island frames different distinct views, but how it almost grows up out of the landscape. It's so much a part of the landscape in both its utilitarian use and its sculptural presence. So how did I get into architecture? What happened was, it actually was part of this building that led me into architecture. When I was at a high school career day, about the year that I did that drawing of my house, I went to Martin Luther King High School, and I signed up for a breakout session, and I didn't know who the breakout session was going to be led by, but I knew that the man looked kind of strange, and he was wearing a white suit and a red bow tie, and I went in there, and there were about 7 other students, and it was Richard Meyer. And I didn't know. I thought he looks kind of like Colonel Sanders, and I thought, you know, what is he talking about, you know? Because I didn't really know what architecture was. But after his presentation, he was presenting his design for the High Museum to us. We were so fortunate to have him there. And then he started to talk about his private residences that he was working on. And I went up to him afterwards, and I said, where would you go to architecture school? And he said, Mississippi State. So the next day, I put together an application, and I started getting ready to go to Mississippi, and that's what happened. Now, I didn't know that in my class, William Faulkner's nephew would be there, or that I would live next door to Eudora Welty, you know. Those things were just magical, you know, things that just happened in my life. But this day, I went to a review at Princeton. This was my professor, David Biggie, and there were 3 architects on his jury. Imagine this kind of dream team jury. Peter Eisenman, Philip Johnson, and Michael Graves. And when I did this drawing, I brought it up to Peter Eisenman. He signed this, and he started to talk to Philip Johnson, and Philip Johnson signed this. And Johnson said, I really like that drawing. And then I went to Michael Graves, and I said, would you sign it? And he said, no. He said, no. And I said, why? And he said, because I don't like those 2. So this is about patience. This story is about patience. Michael Graves, as many of you know, is now confined to a wheelchair. And so 25 years later, one of my best friends was writing a story about him at his residence, and she brought this sketch to him with a note from me explaining and trying to remind him about what happened. And this time he signed it. And so she sent it back to me. So this is by my desk. I look at this and I think about where I've been and where I'm going. And so this is Lightroom. This is the Decatur Square. Here's Decatur High School. This is the site of the first project that I'm going to show you. I'm just going to show you 3 projects and talk to you a little bit about their ideas. So the idea of Lightroom was to create a completely sustainable building that uses vernacular materials. So I mentioned the block is recycled from the old stadium. It also uses Georgia pine and Georgia cypress. And so that is a wood that I really love working with, that is grown in a sustainable forest. And then it has Tennessee maple floors. So this is the ground level of Lightroom right here, the car park and the entry courtyard and this beautiful tree. This is the studio with the framed view out to the historic residence in the Decatur Square. And then the next level is the loft, and the top level is the bocce court, because we have to have a bocce court when we take breaks. And so this overlooks the Atlanta skyline and the city of Decatur. So here you can see the framing device, and this is in the little bunk room, and this is up in the loft. Here's the roof terrace. And so the concept was about compression and expansion. So you walk through the stair in this compressive space, and then you walk through and are taken by the view out to the existing house. And you see the way that the existing residence and the new building are mutually dependent. One is a framing device really acknowledging both the materiality of the existing house, the marble house. It's made of hard coat stucco, which is the same material as Lightroom, but here it's left unrendered, and there is actually no marble that I can find in the marble house. It's scored stucco. So here you are on axis with the marble house and this beautiful tree, and then you turn and walk into the entry stair, and the studio and the roof terrace. And there's the dialogue between new and old, right here. So this is just about a block off the Decatur Square. So that's our home base. And we like working there. Okay, then I had a client that was practicing. He had a band called Train. It's a band here in Atlanta. And he was practicing behind Lightroom and was watching the building go up. And then he came over and said, I want something like that. And this is my wife, and so we started working on a design for a house right near City Hall East on Glen Iris. And then we finished, and we were about to break ground, and his wife came over and said, we're going to get a divorce. And I thought, oh, and she said, but I think I want the house. And you know, I thought, well, I guess that means we have to cut it in half, because he'll get this half and she'll get this half. So I started doing a scheme that, you know, looked at what would happen if the house changed. How would the house change with the idea of a divorce? But what was beautiful about it is that Diane said, no, I want to build it. I still want to build it. All I want to do is be able to afford it. So what we did is we took the single-family house and made it into a duplex by taking the music studio and turning that into a rental unit. And so now she has a duplex, and she's remarried, and the house is intact the way it was designed. And so here's Glen Iris right here, and they're still friends, which is great. We helped them buy this piece of property that allowed the site to be very long and narrow. This is where it originally was. And then we sold this off as a rental property. And then this is the site for the Bush residence. And it's really very much about an urban concept. It's about the house as an urban experience, as a city, and part of the urban fabric. This was really before the old Fourth Ward started to regentrify. And so the concept here, you can see in this sketch, this main axis and these minor axes running through. Each one of these volumes is a different function. This is the painting studio, this is the music studio, this is living, dining, kitchen. And so it really was a kind of amalgam or urban morphology that was informing this project. And so here you can see the main gallery. The wife, Diane, is a painter. This is her studio. And then each one of these separate volumes, all open and looking out toward this courtyard. It actually came from a trip I took to Savannah. I was really interested in the way they would leave in the Savannah plan the center of those squares open as a park. And so I thought, why not have that as the courtyard, which looks out to the view of City Hall East and that beautiful tower. So that's really where the concept came from. And so here it is. And so she had perseverance, and she built the house and has fallen in love again. So that is wonderful. This is her kitchen, which we repurposed from IKEA, Joseph and Anton. And then here is the big space with the minor axes that are expressed by these tall windows that frame views out to the trees. And there's the, and there's the view of the main space back toward the kitchen. and this very Wrightian anchor in the center of the space with the big window looking out and bringing in this beautiful ambient light. So the next project really goes back to Duck Hill and the experience in Duck Hill, because this was my grandparents' house in Duck Hill. It's a dog trot. And this is a shotgun. And so, shotgun shack, sorry. It's not a shotgun, it's a house, sorry. But this is actually a project in Oakhurst. And this was one of our clients that had hired us to design a website, and then he hired us to design his house. And so that's nice the way that happens, because we get interesting people to work with and creative people to work with. And so in this case, we had a very limited budget. It's really a garage, it's a carport as a program, and an outdoor room. So this is the existing house, and we renovated it, and then we added these few pieces on in the back that relate to the Southern vernacular. And here you can see the concept in these diagrams, and here's the hearth, a kind of Semperian hearth right here. This is existing, and this is new, and there's this beautiful tree, and this axis that runs through. And you can see the way that axis then allows the view from the interior space to pass through the center of the carport and outdoor living room to the rear garden. And here's the final resolution. This is the car park, the entry to the house. This is the tree, and this is the hearth. And so here you can see the final plan, and there's the tree. We worked really hard to save that tree because it was not doing so well, but here it is doing really well. And you can see this is porous concrete, and the tree goes up through the center of this trellis of Georgia cypress, and there's that view from the main space in reference to both the dog trot and the shotgun shack. And you can see that you have the privacy from the outdoor living room space, and also the privacy wall becomes an art piece. It frames the view of the tree at night when you drive in, and it floats there. We worked really hard not to let this touch either of those walls, but it floats above this ground plane. And then there's the hearth. So it's an outdoor living room. So that's the Domini Pavilion. And then the next project I'm going to show you is one of those magical type of projects, because now the clients have become some of my closest friends. This is the Village Vets in downtown Decatur. And this story starts with a dog that they gave me when I was awarded the commission. His name is James Brown. And I got him on the day James Brown died. So he is, I think, the incarnate. And if you've met him, you'll see what I mean. But he ate a rock about a week after I got him. And so if any of you have had to deal with vet bills before, this was about as much as a car to get the rock taken out of his stomach. But what was great is that it gave me the chance to really observe how the clinic worked. And so at that time, they were in a tiny space in Decatur, and I walked over there and saw how they were taking care of James. And I noticed that there was a euthanasia happening. And I noticed that the family had to then walk out of a very clinical space through the lobby and past very happy people with their animals. And I thought that should not happen. And so it really helped me to see how the space worked. And so I'll show you what I mean. So this is in downtown Decatur, 2 doors down from Lightroom. Here's the main stair that connects the 3 levels. There's a roof terrace. That's another thing, is they saw the Lightroom roof terrace and said, that's what we want. And this is the lobby with the steel wall. And then this is the doctor's offices here. This is the stray cat window that a bunch of stray cats hang out in here. This is the surgery suite in the back, and this kind of looks like a cat. There's the eyes and the eyebrows and the nose and the mouth. Don't tell anyone I said that. So here's the site right here. There's the Decatur Square. There's Decatur High School. And here's the idea, the concept for the project. And it happened that I had gone to Paley Park in New York, and that's a really interesting space. And so the idea here was to create an urban space that was nurturing and gave something back to the city. But then the chapel became the center of the building. And so it was one of the first vet clinics that had a chapel in it. And the chapel's there for the care of saying goodbye to an animal or when a family is waiting for an animal to come out of surgery. So it really became the center of the project and something very meaningful to these clients. So here you can see the chapel, the urban space that's inspired by Paley Park, the main street right here, and then the car park and entrance through the big dog dish. There's a kind of Barragan-esque dog dish right here by the door, and then the doctor's offices and the roof terrace. And then we worked really hard to integrate the landscape and shield the west-facing glass and hung these pieces of glass off the concrete slabs. And here you can see the spatial variety from the entrance into the courtyard. Here's the chapel. There's the big dog dish. And then here's the entrance from the car park. There's a void stair and a solid stair. So this is the Village Vets project. And that has led to a whole series of other projects that we're working on with this client. I really love this building type. I think it's a really fascinating building type. And so I look forward to working on more projects like this. You really have to make these kind of indestructible. And there's very much a front of house and back of house. And so in this case, they really put an emphasis on the experience that people have when they come to the building. So I like to joke with Will and call this the W for dogs. And so there's the chapel and the dog dish and where the family can wait. And then just a few of our websites. This is the homepage for our original site inside of Lightroom. And a project that we did for Lindsay Dowell, who's a photographer here in Atlanta. That's one thing about these websites is that they're very much like architecture. They're like moving through a building. And so in this case, you have the contact sheet, and when you roll over it, you're then seeing his latest work. And then you can see this references the transparencies of a medium format camera, and even down to the way that the film is marked. And this is our client, Lindsay. And then Mark Edge is another one of our clients that we worked very closely with on his beautiful jewelry collection. In his case, we worked on a website, and the branding, and then all of the viral films to help market his product. And his sales have greatly increased. So in conclusion, what I'm sharing with you is about the immediacy of looking around us and recognizing where you've come from and how those experiences and people in your lives really impact who you are, and how what you do can become bigger than you. Two of the things that Oscar and I have worked together on have been reaching out to inner city high school students and creating a statewide competition for high school students in Georgia. So I'm very proud of how that has grown, and some of our committees here, I think Jay is right here, and that has been an amazing impact over the last 7 years as funding has been cut in Georgia for that. And so I think that's an example of how things can become bigger than you. And then another example is a conference we do every year called Breather, which is held at Agnes Scott. And so you could see that at breather.org, and it's very much about connecting artists and new media designers and architects from all around the world. and talking about cutting-edge ideas. And so I was at IKEA, and I was thinking about Meryl's question, and I turned and held my phone up against the shadow and created this piece, which is very much about the immediacy of twine. And so I just thought it was a beautiful composition, just as a shadow of a phone and this graphic saying twine. So thank you very much for this wonderful honor to be here.
I know that we've run a little long, and so any of you who feel like you should go, please feel free to do so. And Erin, I thought it might be, rather than, because we are going on, maybe we could go directly to audience questions.
I actually had a question for Oscar.
Me?
Yes.
Okay.
I noticed you mentioned about red, and that was obviously a theme that's stayed constant in a lot of your works. What does the color red mean for you, and why do you feel, why does it express itself so much, not just obviously in your art, but in terms of, you know, your firm, that red? What does it red mean for you?
I really don't know. It just comes about. I don't know why. Yeah, no, I have been using red. I have that in my brochures. I have red. I really don't know. This whole thing has been a really fascinating thing, and I want to thank everybody for the opportunity, because I've never, ever looked at what I've been doing in over a period of time. So I found it to be amazing when that first little piece I did had the red in it, and then it looked like this red thing just continues on and on and on, but I really don't know where it comes from. I don't have a clue.
It's a really good color.
So, I don't know.
I want to thank you all, because I love architecture, and much of what we see around us is very subliminal. And I think this afternoon you've really kind of opened our eyes to some of the things that you think about that we don't know that you think about. And I have a question for Oscar as well. I'm a great proponent of children traveling, and I wondered what you brought back from Europe when you went when you were a small child.
Boy, these are good questions. I think the thing I brought back, I remember Venice, going to Venice. Venice just stuck right in my mind, and I said to myself, when I find the right person in my life and I get married, I'm taking her to Venice. And so Venice it just sort of stuck there. And in all of my travel, let's see, in Germany, the thing that stuck in my mind there was the fact that they took out in the backyard, they had these composite piles, I guess, of where the animals, they brought all the stuff out from where the animals were, and they piled it up, and then the sun would bake it, but in the morning you would see it begin to sort of start to have like a smoke that would come off the top of it, you know. And Switzerland, I just remembered at 10 years old was just sort of pristine and clean. And then and then my mother took me to the Louvre. And I was just fascinated by the painting. So I guess the thing that I brought back was just the memories, and they are constant. I mean, so one thing I'd like to say, because I work a lot with young people, is exposure is what we have to do, expose young people as much as we can to a lot of different things, because I think that's the thing that transforms them. If they're not exposed, they really don't know about it. So that trip was just very important to me. So I didn't bring back physically anything. I brought back everything in my mind, I guess.
Hello. A general question for the panel is, most of your presentations look like they were retrospectives, and I was wondering if, as you progressed and evolved, how your artistic expression, both in terms of your art and your architecture, was affected by technology, both in terms of tools and the materials that became available. If you saw something and went, aha, I can use that, or if you generally find yourself searching for something that just isn't there and you're waiting for somebody to make it. How does technology affect your ability to produce your art and architecture as you've gone through these evolutions?
You should talk about that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's see. I think it's just moving so fast, you know? How do we keep up with it? I know as a teacher that the students teach me. You know, they're the ones really keeping up with all of these changes, both with the use of the computer and digital fabrication. And then I think that has really started to change the way that we design. I think that digital fabrication is incredibly exciting, and the notion of a prefabricated house, I think, is one that has great promise, and I think there are some amazing prototypes out there. But just specifically with, for example, on the Village Vets project, that was our first Revit building. And that is a completely different way of thinking about architecture. You're really having to come up with much earlier very concrete ideas about what materials you will use, and the spatial experience, I think, is really incredibly advanced, so much more than a program like SketchUp. But all of that has happened in the last 4 or 5 years. So I think this is still at its infancy. It's just moving so fast, and that's why the ideas are so important, because there's really no way to keep up with that. But I think harnessing it and bringing it into the studio as a way of thinking differently is what should be done.
It's time for maybe one more question.
I was actually pretty glad I was able to see all these different, all your different backgrounds and everything. And speaking about backgrounds, how is having, I see that you all have many different disciplines and a lot of different backgrounds coming up before you got to architecture. How have those different backgrounds helped mold what you've done in architecture throughout your careers?
Yeah, good question. I guess each person brings to any endeavor, you know, their background. And I've noticed teaching that it's really pretty great when the students come from other fields from architecture. You know, some people knew the day they were born that they were going to be an architect, and many of the most profound work has been made by people like that who had a sort of singular orientation and vision. It's a very significant way to work. Another way to work is, you know, weaving in and out of experiences, and sometimes it can be really great to draw upon a whole, perhaps superficially irrelevant body of knowledge or thinking, you know, to influence the culture of a project. So things that one has read or things that one has made by hand, you know, can influence the culture of the project. So, you know, I was worried that somebody would say, what's the difference between art and architecture, or what does it mean to be an artist, architect, or, you know, ask those kinds of questions that are really broad and hard to answer. And so I was trying to think of answers for questions like that. One thought I had was that there may be a difference between without suggesting that any one way is the right way to get to the punchline in this field, because it is such a complex and inherently interdisciplinary field. But one difference I think for some people is having actually made things with their own hands or had an intimate craft experience in some way or another might be somewhat different from always having thought of how to tell other people to do it. I don't know if that answers your question, but that was something I was, if I had to ask panelists other questions, I was going to ask them if that mattered to them. Now I'm completely confused, so.
It makes me think of, it makes me just think of when I worked in the A&P grocery store, and I had I was in charge of, I got promoted to the paper towel aisle. I was in charge of that. And then Jell-O was added, overseeing putting the Jell-O onto the shelves. And I look back at that and I realized that there was an art to that. You know, the way that things were composed, and my boss gave me the chance to compose those beautiful graphics and the Jell-O in the way that I wanted to. And people would always say that aisle is really amazing, you know?
Very
so
good.
That's something from my background. You know, I think that's a great way to approach life is, you know, making whatever situation that you're in better and more memorable.
Like I feel that architecture, everybody has different experiences, and your backgrounds are totally different. Amy's is different than mine, and Merle's different than her. So we're all sort of different, but that area is very, very precise. Everything had to be down to the, you know, small thing. In architecture, it's sort of like a loosey-goosey thing sometimes, you know. So I was trying to do my little drawings. I was down to 0.0000 of an inch when I laid my drawings out. And they said, oh, no, you can't do that. You can be flexible down to 1/4 of an inch. Oh, boy, that's a big, big sort of differential. But I think the field of architecture is changing so fast, and technology is transforming architecture, that architects have to think in brand new ways. So it's brand new ways of thinking, brand new ways of coming with a solution to problems. And you can be architects of the mind, you know. It's all about how you think and how you organize things.
I would just like to say something across the three people here, is that as I've watched what they've been talking about, it seems like this relationship between art and architecture is actually a lifetime enterprise, and will continue to, one will affect the other back and forth over time. And for example, I'll use Amy as an example. You know, her research around the haze, around the ephemeral, is in fact a huge question in how ephemerality can challenge the, you know, the seemingly rigidity or severity of architecture, and where that might take her in terms of space making, in terms of materiality, in just in terms of experience of architecture. So we could have that kind of conversation with all three people, but I find that so interesting, so exciting, that she has this course set out for her, this research. It's just, I'm really jealous.
Well, thank you all for coming this afternoon, and thank you to our audience. We'll have another panel discussion similar to this in January on the 16th at 2 p.m. here. You can pick up a flyer on your way out, so please join us for that. Thank you.